and I say it's based on my experience and knowledge, understanding of nutrition. The less food you eat, chances are the less you'll weigh. And it sounds very obvious, but that is the fine and honest truth. There was a whole thing it's about a year or two ago when I started up on YouTube a little bit, about like 80-20 fat ratios, percentages. And I always say, well, 80-20 of what? If you're eating 20% of your caloric value, labeled food value intake from protein, and that is 5 kilos of steak per day, that means you're eating like 20 bricks of butter a day. It doesn't give any context whatsoever to what someone is actually eating. People always do this in consultations. I say, how much meat do you eat per day in raw weight? And I'll say, well, I eat about 2 ribeye. Doesn't answer my question. They ask the question over and over again. I eventually get to the end point where I get the answer. But it is quite frustrating because it seems to be common sense. If you eat less food, you'll be less weight. And obviously, yeah, if you eat a pile of sugar and that's all you eat, you'll be diabetic and you'll eventually lose muscle mass and eventually you'll reduce your metabolic rate. Then that amount of sugar will become a surplus at that point. I think the idea of looking at it as like a mass balance model is the most effective because it is the most scientifically valid and it has been tried, tested, and proven against the calories in, calories out metric. What they find is you eat less food, you weigh less. Now, there's obviously specificity towards the macronutrient intake that you do have. Obviously, if you eat more protein, you're probably going to retain more protein and muscle tissue on your body. And you'll know that because if you eat too much protein, you might become hypoglycemic. You might get a blood sugar crash. That is actually very, very, very rare, largely speaking. I don't come across many people that experience that. Now, if you've got gut dysbiosis, microbiome negative shift, and bacteria in your gut hasn't adjusted to the diet you're having, you're making all these changes, keto snacks one day, bone broth the next day, steak and eggs the next day, your diet's all over the shop. In which case, yeah, if you eat something that is a burden to your body, it's an inflammatory toxin overburden because it's too much, as anything can be. You got a problem then. Your body's going to do something strange to say, stop eating or throw up or don't eat anymore or your stomach's full. So we have all these mechanoreceptors and nutrient density receptors in our bodies, in our brains, which identify how much food we're taking in. So I like Lee's element of, try it, get lean. When you get too lean, your body will tell you, and that's absolutely bang on true. Now, in a case where you're trying to get very lean, I do tend to recommend increasing protein much higher for that satiety feeling. But at the end of the day, you have to have your specific goals, your specific endpoint. So if you're saying to me, if Lee came to me and said, okay, I want to get straight out my mind and retain all the muscle I've got in my body. So I might say, okay, do, 160 protein per day. And say he's just got 2 weeks to do it. And he says, right, I don't care what the diet is, I just got to do it. 20 grams, 30 grams, 50 grams of fat per day. I'll probably say close to about 100 if I'm honest, but say it's 50 grams per day. He'd run that for 2 weeks. He's already a lean chap. If he got even leaner, he's going to binge. It's inevitable. So you have to make sure your endpoint is realistic. Now, right now, as we speak, I'm sat at 4.3% body fat using digital body fat calipers. That's accurately tested by myself, who have been doing body fat tracking for about 10 years on my same parts of body over and over again, routinely every week for about 10 years. It's a useful trend. So I also recommend having a right yardstick, a right measurement, a right metric to work out, are you getting better or not? And the yardstick will change depending on who you are. For me, to spot visual changes, I need to take photos, look in the mirror, do body fat measurements. Just because my level of body fat is so low, for me to accurately track it, I'm going to have to use a more precise measurement. Whereas someone that's coming to me from a standpoint of being, say, 30 stone, 400 pounds, I don't know. And yeah, you can step on the scales, it gives you good indicators, but you're going to lose water weight the first week. What I want to know is, how do your clothes fit? Do you feel strong? How do you sleep? How do your health markers come about? What would you feel like day to day? That's what's going to be the most integral part of the diet. So I think, largely speaking, you're going to want to decrease the amount of food you're eating. Your protein should remain relatively stable. Professor Barkay and I are of the exact same mind when it comes to protein and fat intake. So protein remains stable to sustain you, to do what you need to do, recover, build muscle, whatever. Then fat is like the lever in terms of your output. You can't go too far in either direction. Your body will fight back. That is the biggest problem I experience with most people. But a few weeks back, actually, maybe a few months back, Stephen did this brilliant presentation on our consortium, our Team GB chats. And it's on blood sugar levels, if you remember. I can't remember if you're there. You might have been. He basically put up a presentation on the screen. He sort of looked at it. We're talking old science, not like brand new stuff. There's loads of follow-ups, loads of things, and they're like, okay, my protein was this. It did this to my blood sugar levels, and they didn't find a significant bump. So there's obviously not an exponential increase in blood glucose levels in response to protein ingestion. Obviously, if there's too much, you'll be constipated. You won't be able to keep that up for very long. So it's very unlikely that someone can become diabetic or insulin resistant by following a high protein diet. It's extremely difficult. Experiments myself, I've done this myself and had it with clients. I've had some people run up to about 300 grams of protein per day with no significant or noteworthy increase in fasting blood glucose or HbA1c over a 3-month span. I'm of the same experience as that, but I'm eating relevant and specific to what I want to achieve and my body composition and my appetite at that point in time. Recently, so I'm currently in a mass gaining phase, for what it's worth. I started on macros at 360 protein, 20 carbs, I believe 200 fat. I did that for about 4 weeks because I kept getting results. No extra body fat, but my weight was going up, getting stronger in the gym, feeling a bit better, recovering a bit better in some cases. Now, if I start to gain body fat, what am I going to reduce? The protein or the fat? The fat that gets transmuted directly into fat before it is oxidized is likely to be the biggest lever in terms of my body composition. So therefore, I'm reducing the fat if I gain too much fat. But now, if my digestion's slow, which it has been the last few days, so with that in mind, I spotted the problem. I made the intervention. Protein dropped to 340 from 360. Carbs kept around about the same 20 grams from dairy, eggs, coffee, things like that. Don't eat much eggs nowadays, guys, but still. And the fat increased to 210 grams. So a more efficient energy source to help my training, recovery, sleep, things like that. But I don't have excess soreness in my muscles. Therefore, I don't need extra protein. So I can start to reduce that. Now, when I get really sore, my muscles sore from the workout, yeah, increase the protein a bit, but it doesn't have to be a lot. So if I say added 10 grams extra per day, so got up to 350 again for a week, you're looking at 70 grams extra protein per day. And that's about the absolute, per week. So that's about the absolute amount of muscle tissue almost anyone could gain, like lean muscle tissue in a week. So I don't need to increase it more than that because there's no indication for me to do it. That's probably the best take you're going to get on protein, fat, macros, and body composition I think exists. But I've covered all the angles I possibly can. But I see this come up a lot. That's why I speak about it so candidly and passionately, because I see a lot of misinformation. It's not like I have all the information, but when I see the misinformation making people fat and ill and not getting better, we have a problem.